tell you that Shadow of Mordor is nothing more than Assassin's Creed in the Lord of the Rings universe with a bit of Batman Arkham Asylum thrown in for good measure and be done with it. To be honest, that's essentially what it is. And to be honest, doesn't that sound like a bloody good game anyway? One that you'd want to play? Of course it does. But let's go into a little more detail than that, because developers Monolith have created something nothing short of a bloody miracle here. Not only have they adapted a massive, much-loved movie franchise into a video game that isn't shite, but they've also done it in a way that introduces brand new characters to tell the story of what happens between one trilogy of movies and another trilogy of movies, in a way that still flows through the complete storyline, in a way that not only makes sense, but also adds further to the story that was already there. Fucking hell, Monolith. Are you going to be turning water into wine next? Yes, believe it or not, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor is a very good game. One of the best games of 2014, to be honest. Set in a time after the events of the Hobbit trilogy, but before the events of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Dark Lord Sauron is keeping himself busy by establishing a power base in Mordor and building himself an army of orcs. But he's got a bit of a thorn in his side, which is where our main hero comes in. Looking an awful lot like Boromir and other long-haired beady types from the movies, our main hero, Talion, is out for revenge after the brutal murder of himself and his entire family, and he's only been kept alive by a rogue ringwraith who has his own agenda. Throughout the game, Talion targets numerous high-ranking members of the Orc army in what is seemingly an attempt to get into the Middle-earth Book of Records for most number of Orcs spit-roasted on the end of a big bloody sword. So yes, as mentioned before, it's a bit of Assassin's Creed and a bit of Arkham Asylum as you embark on a number of stealthy stabbings along with some counter-based combat against multiple attackers. There are also some side quests along the way to keep you busy and for some much needed extra XP. The orcs will always try to overwhelm you with sheer numbers rather than any sort of clever strategy, but your main fella, whilst not being the most interesting character I've ever encountered, certainly has some fantastic powers and abilities to utilise against Mordor's finest, including the ability to read the mind of any of his foes, either taking over their bodies completely or finding useful information about their strengths and weaknesses. So upon finding out that a certain war chief is absolutely terrified of those big wolf things that the other orcs ride on, you can set one of them free from their chained up prison and then laugh as the war chief cacks his pants in front of his troops before he gets savaged to bits. You see, the orcs of Mordor have a hierarchy, with war chiefs at the top and a number of lesser captains underneath, all chomping at the bit to get promoted. And one surefire way of a captain getting promoted is by killing you. So it's important that you get killed as little as possible, as each time your killer will gain a prominent new role within the army, and your plans for taking down a certain war chief gets a new monkey wrench thrown into them. Not only does this keep you invested in your own character not getting killed, but it creates an environment for organic storytelling, which is where the Nemesis System comes into play. Random Orc number 32 has just killed you, and now he's become promoted to Grulak the Goat Fucker. Now you're after his hide, and this shit's just become personal. Enemies also develop as Talion interacts with them. For example, an orc who is thrown into a fire by Talion might pop up later on in the game with half his face burnt off, wanting to exact revenge on our hero for getting disfigured. Things get even more interesting later on when you insert your brainwashed orcs into the entourages of your assassination targets, essentially making them sleeper agents on your side. And once you've got a sleeper agent in the hierarchy, you can help him gain further power by intervening in his battles and so on, actually becoming invested in the career of your random orc, once of course you know his stupid name and that he likes axes and dislikes being set on fire. With great graphics, great sound, great gaming mechanics, parkour, stealth, superb combat action and an interesting and organic storyline that we haven't seen before from the world of Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor stands as one of the best games of 2014. As a result, Shadow of Mordor gets a thumbs up. My only gripe with the game is, weirdly enough, not actually the game itself. It's the decision to have the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions not available on the same day that the PS4 and Xbox One versions were released. In fact, those of us with an older console had to wait an entire additional month before we could play the game. I didn't like this at all. It just seems like it's a ploy for you to go out and buy a new console in order to play this game earlier. In future, if it's going to be a multiple platform title, then have all the versions available on the same day of release, please. No more of this silliness. I also do not like that Warner Brothers were essentially giving out some overbearing terms and conditions to other YouTubers out there who got digital copies of the game early for review purposes. How overbearing were these? Well, Warner Brothers wanted the reviewers to persuade their watchers to buy the game, to promote the Nemesis System, not to show any potential bugs or glitches, and bizarrely enough, not to mention any of the Lord of the Rings or Hobbit movies, or characters or books. Also, the company got final approval on the YouTube video itself, where they reviewed it and suggested changes which you then had to follow. Okay. Well, there's no way I was going to be following this sort of bollocks, which is why I'm reviewing this game a considerable amount of months after it's been released. How can you possibly give your honest opinion on a game if your comments are going to be dumbed down or your video is going to become lobotomized? And the funny thing is that none of this overbearing, overzealous bullshit was needed in the first place, because at the end of the day, the finished game is a bloody good one. One of the best of the year, if I haven't already mentioned that. And it really didn't need this shit hanging over it. That's not Monolith's fault, that's Warner Brothers' fault. And in the past, they've been absolute twats when it comes to stamping their boots all over YouTube. But by doing this, all they're doing is showing a lack of confidence in their own product. Something that will do much greater damage to their sales figures than some one random British bloke on YouTube with too much time on his hands. So, let's have no more of this utter bollocks, okay? This is the Big Daddy D, signing off. Oh.